Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 4 of Giro d'Italia 2023. Now, today's stage was always going to be billed from the rider in the pink jersey that this is going to be a stage for the breakaway to get away and for the leader's jersey to change on today's stage. Remco Evenepoel's words, not mine. He said it on stage 1 after he won the individual time trial. So what does that mean on a stage like today? It's 175 kilometers. There's 3 good climbs on today's race, but they're just over 6%. They're not in that 7-8 effort of climbs where you really get the pure climbers and the pure GC guys that'll battle on the finishing climb of today's stage. So when you're at 6% instead of 7 and 8, yeah, sure, you're going to drop the sprinters, but you're going to have a lot more guys battling for today's stage, win, and possibly for taking the race leader's pink jersey, because Remco Evenepoel said he'd be happy to give it away to somebody on stage 1 after he won the individual time trial. Now, the thing to look forward to in today's stage, if you're one of the attackers, is that there's a lot of bumps in today's stage. So if you're Soudal Quickstep, you don't necessarily like today's stage either, because every time you're doing big efforts to try to pull something back on these bumps, when you're talking about Ballerini and Joseph Cherney, the little bit heavier guys on their team, these guys are going to suffer because they're the first 2 riders, of course, that are going to be doing work for Soudal Quickstep, but they're going to be doing work going up the hill, down the hill, when everyone back there in the Peloton's getting a free ride. So if they catch a big break that was trying to get away, Joseph Cherney and Davide Ballerini, that is, if they do that big effort coming down or on a flat section, once the road goes up, those guys have been maxed out to the limit. They're redlined throughout the whole time trying to bring back these big chase efforts. So that means the next break can start going up the road. It also means that even if you're a strong rider, when you're trying to get away in these breaks, if you get caught from those 2 Soudal Quickstep riders after doing a big effort and those riders sitting on, now you're in that group of 5, 10, 15, 30 riders getting caught that did big time effort, and then riders from the back start coming around and flowing, and it makes it very difficult to control the pace on a stage like today, especially when Remco Evenepoel said, we're going to give the pink jersey away on stage 1 after the individual time trial. That's a bit of a knucklehead statement, even though everyone knows a stage like today would be kind of up there as an option. You don't just need to throw it out there and say, guys, I'm going to just drop money from the back of the car right at this spot during a 3-week race. So when the racing starts, bam, there's action all over the place. It's going to be fast and furious. Was a little bit damp at the start, but right now it still seems to be pretty good conditions at the moment, and the attacks are coming fast and furious, and every one of the attacks are being followed by Brandon McNulty, UAE Team Emirates, who is putting on a display of force here at the beginning of stage 4. Remember, yesterday he dropped out of that front group with 8 kilometers to go, lost about 4.5 minutes, so he's more than 5 minutes down on the general classification. So with every attack Brandon McNulty is getting in, it's Soudal Quickstep back there bringing it back. Early in the race, with about 160 kilometers to go, we're talking about a dozen riders, 11, 12 riders up there, and Brandon McNulty's one of them. And you look back there, Soudal Quickstep is still on the front, driving it as hard as they can to bring back this group. I don't like this tactic. I don't know if I'd call them a knucklehead for bringing back 11, 12 rider group here with Brandon McNulty in it, but he's 5 minutes down on the general classification. He's not a super threat when you're looking at the bigger mountains later in the Giro d'Italia. If Remco Evenepoel can't drop Brandon McNulty later, they got bigger problems, I'm sure. And with a 5-minute gap, you can kind of let this group go and not have any problems. Just set back, make it a nice, smooth day. Give them a bunch of time, set some tempo on the back there, bring them back near the finish. Someone in this group up front certainly going to be higher up on general classification than Brandon McNulty. But hey, at the end of the day, in my book up here on the Butterfly Effect, if Brandon McNulty wants to get in the pink race leader's jersey when you're UAE Team Emirates and you want to defend for this next week of racing with a 1-minute gap on Remco Evenepoel possibly, and you can't bring it back later in the Giro d'Italia, like I said, I don't think you're going to win anyways, and that could have reduced a lot of the squad of UAE Team Emirates, because you would have had all those guys riding on the front instead of being able to sit back later. Now, I don't necessarily like the attacks from UAE Team Emirates with the plan yesterday, if that was on purpose to drop Brandon McNulty out of that front group either. I think I would have kept him in the front group, and I would have kept him calm on this stage and used him later when we're talking about week 2 of the Giro d'Italia, so you have multiple riders on the general classification that can start putting in a threat on pseudo quick step later in the Giro d'Italia, not so early like we're seeing right here. This is more like a Movistar tactic where at the Tour de France years past, where every year after year after year, the first mountain stage, they were just willing to blow their whole team. And this is what I'm seeing from UAE Team Emirates. But am I impressed by Brandon McNulty? Absolutely. The American kid is dominating the beginning part here of stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia, and Quick-Step are doing everything they can to rein him back in. Now with Joseph Cherney and with Davide Ballerini doing so much work, we're going to see Ballerini come out the back. Joseph Cherney's going to come out the back. Siri had some bike issues, so he's been chasing. So pseudo Quick-Step, they're not in the best shape as we're getting just 30, 20, 40 kilometers in today's race. They're already getting down on numbers. Now with 40 kilometers to go, the Peloton is in pieces. I mean, there's 4 or 5 pieces spread all out as they were dropping down this descent. We look at the Peloton spread out all over the place. Their sprinters have already been dropped back there. And we look at this front group now. It's about 30 guys. There's 3 UAE Team Emirates riders in there. Davide Formulo, I recognize, and Brandon McNulty. Of course, I told you he was in everything. Quick-Step have 1 rider, but then when the cameras fade back with about 130 kilometers to go, check it out. UAE Team Emirates have missed the boat. Sure, they got 3 in this front group, but they're chasing back there because they got 4 riders back there, and it's Jay Vine last on line there for UAE Team Emirates, and then it's Almeida just in front of him. We got Covey on the front pulling, and Ryan Gibbons sitting second wheel as these 2 guys are doing everything they can to pull back this front group of about 30 riders up there. With UAE Team Emirates missing the boat, we don't exactly know why because they didn't show it on the camera. They just show these guys chasing like crazy. Now Brandon McNulty, he's got to let off the gas and quit attacking at the front up there so that everything can come back and they can bring Almeida and Jay Vine, their GC fighters, up here for the Giro d'Italia victory. After the end of this 3 weeks, they got to get them back up here in the front. So this is when Brandon McNulty has to shut off the gas. Then we go back to that chase group. We see Alessandro Covey. He's done. He's had it. He's pulled over to the left. And now Gibbons, Ryan Gibbons, he has to do an amazing job. For 3-4 kilometers, Ryan Gibbons, UAE Team Emirates, is drilling it with everything he can to bring back this front group and close the gap so they can get Jay Vine and Almeida up to this front group. Now, I told you at the beginning, it was a little bit wet and damp, but now as we start getting in between the valleys and the climbs, as they go up, they're into the fog. When they go down, the roads are slippery and messy. And then when they get in the valley later in this stage, the sun's going to come back out. It's crazy. When they'll go up to the finish, the fog will be back there too. So there's all kinds of action still to come here on today's stage 4. Now, as everything had come back together, we start seeing more and more attacks again, and then Brandon McNulty's represented in most of them. All of a sudden, we come up to the top of this first KOM. We see it's Thibaut Pinot as everything gets brought back together with Thibaut pulling on the front. He's going to light it up for the KOM and grab some more KOM points here at the Giro d'Italia on stage 4. They go over the top of this KOM. Things are getting interesting on the descent because Sam Omen, Jumbo-Visma, has not 1 flat but a double flat. Then shortly after Sam Omen, all of a sudden we'll see Michael Hessman. He's crashing as the riders are going into the right turn. He loses it because it's wet and slippery. Bike comes out from underneath him and he slides out across the pavement. He does get up and hopefully he's going to be okay. Everybody finished today's stage with the exception of 1 rider, so I assume he is okay, at least at this time, while we're shooting here at the butterfly effect. Now, is everything up front, when those 2 crashes were, when the flat tires back there from Sam Omen and the crash from Michael Hessman happened, all of a sudden the cameras fan back up front and it's 97 kilometers to go. We got a breakaway of 7 riders. This is when it starts to form. I saw and witnessed probably 100 different attacks back there from the beginning, from kilometer 0 all the way into 97 kilometers to go. And somehow the cameras missed the attack that actually finally gets established here on stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia. And there's 7 riders in this front group. It's Aurelion from Parapente, AG2R. He's 2 minutes, 13 seconds down on the general classification. Niccolo Conci from Albacete de Cunic, Vincenzo Albanese from Iolo Cometa, who's 217 down on the general classification, Warren Barguil, Arkea Samsic, who suffered through yesterday's stage 3, Andreas Luknesen from DSM, he's 140 and the highest rider on the general classification in this group. 2 Trek Segafredo riders in the form of Gabriel Zabier from Trek Segafredo and Tom Squinge, the second Trek Segafredo rider up there to round out 7 guys. Bruno Armai from FDJ was chasing back there solo, trying to close this gap, but he's going to come up short and go back to the Peloton. Then when the cameras fan back, we see it's Quick-Step getting everything under control. Up front, coming down the descent, Remco Evenepoel pulls up next to his one teammate that's left up front of him. They have a little discussion, and they get everything under control here in the Peloton. As the Peloton starts getting bigger and bigger, we see him going curb to curb. Now we know that this is going to be a breakaway of 7 that's going to decide who wins today's stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia. As the riders in the back are going curb to curb and going through the feed zone, I can tell you from experience, when the racing has been this insane for 80 kilometers, everybody is just ready to finally shut it off and call a truce until we get into the final climb, right? But the final climb at 6% and 10K long, it's not super steep for the general classification. Big time battlers here at the Giro d'Italia, so we're not certain what will happen back there. But you know, in that front group of 7, they're going to battle all the way up this final climb to see who can win today's stage and get themselves in the race leader's jersey, with 4 guys up here as a threat on the general classification to take pink at the end of the stage. Now, as we see 7 Quick-Step riders come to the front, they'll keep everything under control going up the next climb here, the second categorized climb that the Peloton will face here on stage 4. But they're all curb to curb, which means they're not going super fast because Pseudo Quick-Step's got everything under control. The front group of 7, they'll go over the top of the KOM here with about 4 or 5 minute gap on the Peloton being led by Pseudo Quick-Step. Coming down the descent onto the next final flat section before we hit the final climb, this is when we're going to see Remco Evenepoel start to take the race serious as he starts to take his leg warmers off. Now, I got a little sweet spot in the heart here for Remco Evenepoel wearing leg warmers because I always kept mine on unless I knew for sure that I was going to be covering attacks or making attacks. Otherwise, if I could stay warm in these kind of damp, wet, foggy, then dry, then wet again conditions, I always loved the warmth of having the leg warmers on. But it's time for Remco Evenepoel to get down to business. So we see the Pseudo Quick-Step rider drop the leg warmers. And now it's time for the Peloton back there to start getting serious as we're coming into this final last climb here on stage 4. Now up front, with about 15 kilometers to go, there's a time bonus sprint. And we'll see that it's Luknesen from DSM, who is the biggest threat on general classification. He wins the time bonus sprint right before the last climb starts here on stage 4. Then when they come into the last climb with about 10 kilometers to go, you see everything up front in that group of 7. Nobody wants to start lighting anything up. But they only have a 4-minute and 20-second gap. So if somebody wants to take pink today, they got to keep the pace a little bit fast, because behind we start seeing a little more pace from the Peloton when they hit the climb, with Pseudo Quick-Step up front as they start dropping riders out the back, with riders such as Cherney the first to go because they did work all day long throughout today's race. So you know he's tired and he's fought to get back on every time he's been dropped. Peter Seria will come out the back early here on today's stage 4 climb 2. And then up front in the group of 7, we get into 7 kilometers to go. And this is when we see that first attack from Conchi. Conchi throws in the first attack, and we'll see Trek Segafredo, Tom Squinge. Squinge covers the attack, then throws in his own attack. Behind what's happening in the group of 5, well, we got Albanese back there pulling hard, trying to bring this thing all back together. He does, and now all of a sudden, we got it back together with the exception of Warren Barguil, or Arkea Samsic, who was the first to get dropped out of this group of 7, out of the back anyways. Now, all of a sudden, with 6 kilometers to go, we'll see Andreas Luknesen. He's going to throw in his first attack, and this is going to split the group up to pieces. And we see Parapentre from AG2R and Gabriel Zabier in there from Trek Segafredo. These 3 riders have dropped everyone else behind, and now they're trying to win the stage and take pink jersey here at the Giro d'Italia. Now that Luknesen's not done, because with 4.5 kilometers to go, he throws in his next attack, and it's only Parapentre, the AG2R rider, that can stay up there with Andreas Luknesen. 4 kilometers to go. That's only 500 meters later. Andreas Luukkonen from DSM throws in his next attack, and he gaps off Parapente from AG2R. With about 3.5 kilometers, though, the climb starts to have a little step there where it eases off a lot. Got almost a slight little descent there, and Parapente from AG2R, he does everything he can to close the gap back up to the DSM rider Luukkonen. Now they come over the top of the KOM side by side together, and they'll drop down the descent here with about 3 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers to go to the finish line. And this is when we see Parapente. He's upset. He's throwing out the arm there. He's got the elbow throwing, and he can't get Luukkonen to come through right away because Luukkonen's back there digging in his pocket. Luukkonen will ride by, and then they'll work together until about 1.5. And now you see it again. Parapente again is upset at Luukkonen because he knows Luukkonen can be in pink at the end of today's race if they just drive it into the line, which means Parapente can sit back there and go, hey, I'll go for the stage win, no problem. Well, as we come into 1K to go, Luukkonen, he gets going under the 1K banner, 900 meters. You see him hop on the radio. You know right now he's got to be asking his DS, all right, director, how much time do I have? Am I guaranteed pink at this moment? Because if I pull 100% for 900 meters, I'm going to lose the stage of the Giro d'Italia. But if you tell me I got a 140 buffer on the Peloton behind, well, that means I can get myself in pink, and a guaranteed pink, I'd take over a possible stage victory anytime. I've done it myself when I was at the Tour of Romandie and got the race leader's jersey back in my lotto day, so I know the feeling. Well, 800 meters, we see it's Luukkonen still on the front. 600 meters, 500 meters, he's still on the front. Then with just under 200 meters to go, Parapente knows he's got enough speed to take it to the line as he starts his sprint for here victory at stage 4. Immediately at 100 meters to go, he looks back. He's got this stage wrapped up. He's sitting up and celebrating with about 40 meters to go, crossing the line, knowing that AG2R have a stage victory here at the Giro d'Italia. Now Andreas Luukkonen, DSM, he'll cross the line just about 2 seconds off of the French rider's wheel, but that'll be enough to give him the pink race leader's jersey here at the Giro d'Italia. So both riders, first and second, win on today's stage 4. Third place was the bike throw back there, Trek Segafredo. Tom Squinch rounds out the podium here on stage 4. Now the Peloton behind, what was happening going up that last climb? Well, like I said, Soudal Quickstep had everything under control early in the climb. Then with about 5K to go, Team Ineos jumped on the front. They started drilling it. We saw the last Soudal Quickstep rider come out the back just about that same moment, Ian Van Wilder getting dropped. That left a small group up front with all the GC favorites, but Remco Evenepoel was isolated up front. Ineos kept drilling it. I don't like this tactic much either. I don't see the point of still drilling it. You've dropped all of his teammates. You got Remco Evenepoel isolated. This climb's not incredibly difficult. You still got 4 riders left there. Just try to attack them with your GC guys. See if you can get some time on Remco Evenepoel, because this is the kind of climb, if you're going to attack one of the best riders in the world, Remco Evenepoel and Primož Roglič, this is the kind of climb to do it, because at 6%, and just maybe a hair over here or there and a hair softer before you get to the top of today's climb, this is a good place where if Remco Evenepoel gets stuck chasing on the front back there with 4 kilometers, 5 kilometers to go, that'll put the kid under a little bit of hurt. But because the speeds are so fast, that'll give the draft back there better for everyone else. So any attack you could make on a climb of this pitch, you can counterattack Remco Evenepoel if he can bring those attacks back. Possibly get him to hesitate for a second with him wanting maybe Almeida to chase something back, or possibly Primož Roglič, and that'll give an opportunity for one of the other guys in the top 10 of the general classification to possibly get a gap on Remco Evenepoel. Can't tell you 100% if it would work, because we all know Remco Evenepoel, he might just go to the front and time trial it all the way to the finish and drop everyone, but highly unlikely on a climb of this pitch. Instead, Ineos back there just ride a hard tempo, isolated Remco Evenepoel, but then they just pulled him all the way to the line, and it was one of the Jumbo-Visma riders that finished across the line first in the Peloton of GC favorites to get himself an 8th on the stage, about 2 minutes and 1 second back from the time there at Parapente. So, of course, Remco Evenepoel will hand over the jersey to the DSM rider Luukkonen, and why would he want to do that? You fans sitting at home, well, I'll tell you right now, anytime you can have some help in these later stages, when you start looking at every stage from here all the way to the individual time trial on stage 9, if you can have another team helping you out, Remco Evenepoel can use these whole next stages, 5 through 8, to hopefully have a lot of help in the early parts of the stage, if not all the way to the finish. I don't know if DSM can honestly go all the way to the finish, or if Luke Nissen can on these next stages, but possibly he can if it's not Remco Evenepoel just driving it on the front of the climbs. So if that's the case, even if you get 1, 2, 3, or 4 more stages of rest, that's a gift here at the Giro d'Italia. Then, of course, Remco Evenepoel could always take the jersey back whenever he wants from Luke Nissen, either in the individual time trials or on one of the next big summit finishes later in the second week of the Giro d'Italia. Only problem I had at all was Pseudo Quickstep's tactics throughout today. I thought they did a lot of work. I would have even given the breakaway there with Luke Nissen even a minute, 2, or 3 even for Luke Nissen, because if he does get dropped on these next stages that are semi-mountainous, he could still keep the race leader's jersey, and you can have help from DSM later. Because with Luke Nissen, I can't really tell you, he might get dropped 2 days from now, and then Remco Evenepoel's right back in the pink leader's jersey where he doesn't want to be at this moment so early at the Giro d'Italia. So honestly, when I break down Pseudo Quickstep's mistakes throughout today's stage, they're almost there on the border of being knuckleheads. They shouldn't have chased Brandon McNulty down. I don't believe that was a lot of work for your team. And they definitely should have given the breakaway guys up front a whole lot more time on today's stage and just took the whole stage off completely. Now, when we're talking about all the team's bad luck, well, we saw Pseudo Quickstep. Like I said, I think they did too much work, and they had a lot of guys suffering out the back, getting dropped left and right today. Jumbo-Visma had 2 riders have issues today, so you know they were chasing and spending a lot of energy when Sam Omen double flatted, and when Michael Hessman crashed. That definitely could hurt the team some later on in the race. And there was times, of course, when Primož Roglič just didn't have the numbers always wrapped around him, which means Jumbo-Visma needed as much help as possible. UAE Team Emirates, they didn't come out of this too clean, right? Brandon McNulty spent a ton of chips going in deep trying to win today's stage, and instead he came up snake eyes, wasted a ton of energy up there. On top of that, they had Diego Ulisses, who crashed in today's stage 4, and then they had teammates split up back there chasing for general classification to get back together, while they had teammates up front chasing to try to make the race hard. It was a double-edged sword there, and not in the favor of UAE Team Emirates. So the 3 big teams here all seem to suffer big time here on stage 4. This definitely was not no limo ride to the finish of today's stage 4. But congratulations to Luke Nissen, who actually took the race leader's pink jersey today, and of course to the Frenchman, Parapentre from AG2R, who won today's stage. Both riders come out with a win on stage 4 as far as I'm concerned up here on the Butterfly Effect. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next stage of the Giro d'Italia for stage 5 real soon.